Before I get to working with web services, I'll describe how to use the asynctask class to manage background threads in an Android app. I'm working in the project asynctask, and I'll start in the main activity class. To work with asynctask, you create a subclass of asynctask, and typically you declare this subclass as an inner or member class of the activity that's going to use the background thread. So in main activity, I'll go down to the bottom of the code, and I'll make a bit of space after the last method. I'll declare a private class, and I'll name it myTask. And I'll extend the class asynctask. I'll press Control Space and choose asynctask from the Android.os package, and that auto-completes the class signature. When you extend asynctask, you need to declare three generic types, named here params, progress, and result. I'll set them all to string, and I'll explain what they each do as I do the coding. Then I'll add in a pair of braces to complete the code block. Notice that there's an error indicator in the trough on the left, and the most important error here is that I must implement an inherited abstract method named doInBackground. Asynctask has this one abstract method that you have to implement. It has other methods that you can override, but those methods are fully implemented in the superclass. In this subclass, the only method you have to do is doInBackground. I'll click on the error indicator and choose the quick fix Add Unimplemented Methods. Notice that the doInBackground method is set up to receive a set of parameters. The three dots mean that you can pass in a list of parameters, any number of parameters in any order, but they must all be strings. Now that's not always true of all async tasks. The reason my doInBackground method is expecting strings is because I declared the parameters type here. That was the first generic declaration. Also notice that doInBackground returns a string, and that's because of this generic type, which is called the result. The doInBackground method receives arguments of a particular type and returns a result of a particular type. And all of the code that runs within this method will run in a background thread. Now, because you're running in a background thread during this method, you don't have access to the user interface, or the main thread. And so to provide that access, the asynctask superclass provides other methods that you override. I'll override the first one here, above doInBackground. I'll type onPre and press Control Space, and I'll choose onPreExecute. The onPreExecute method is executed before doInBackground. And unlike doInBackground, it has access to the main thread. So you can do anything in this method that you can do in the outer class. I'm going to get rid of the comment and also the call to the superclass's version of the method, and I'll replace that with a call to my custom method updateDisplay, and I'll pass in a literal string of starting task. So that method is called before doInBackground. And there's another method that's called after doInBackground, and that's called onPostExecute. OnPostExecute receives a result. The data type of the result is determined by this declaration. It's the same data type as is returned from doInBackground, and in fact, the doInBackground method is going to return a value which is then directly passed into onPostExecute. And onPostExecute has access to the main thread. So in doInBackground, I'll pass back a value of task complete. That value will be passed into onPostExecute right here, and I can display that in the user interface. I'll once again call updateDisplay, and I'll pass in the result. I'll get rid of the comment in the doInBackground method so that for the moment all I'm doing is returning a value. And now, before I can test this class, I have to create an instance of it and execute its code. To do that, I'll go to my onOptionsItem selected method. That's at line 33 of this code. I'll get rid of the code that's updating the display currently, and I'll create an instance of my task. I'll declare the data type my task. I'll create the reference variable named task, and I'll instantiate the class with a no-arguments constructor. Then I'll execute the task by calling an execute method. When you execute the task, you can pass in as many parameters as you want, separated by commas, but they all have to be of the type that's declared in the params data type generic declaration. So I'll pass in 3 values, param1, param2, and param3. And now I'm ready to test the app. I'll save and run the app in the emulator. And when I click the action bar item, I see starting task and then immediately task complete. Now this isn't doing much yet, but you can see that by executing the task, you're at least calling on pre-execute, you're passing value back from do in background, and you're calling on post-execute. And you're successfully updating the display. So now if that's working, you're ready to go to the next step in understanding async task and adding some more complex functionality in the background thread.